This is private community property, and you need to leave immediately. The woman in the navy blazer is blocking my car door, clipboard clutched like a weapon, standing on the ranch driveway where 3 generations of my family lived for 60 years. I just drove 3 hours from Dallas with my grandmother's will and probate papers, ready to start my new life as a freelance photographer on land that's been in our family since 1962. Instead, there's a stark white sign that wasn't here last month. Riverside Meadows HOA, private community, no trespassing. I'm Victoria Patterson, president of the Riverside Meadows HOA. She announces before I can even step out. Your grandmother failed to pay community assessment fees for 3 years. This property was legally purchased at a tax auction last month. She's waving a manila folder filled with official-looking documents, complete with embossed seals that catch the sunlight. My stomach drops. That's impossible. My grandmother paid her property taxes every January like clockwork for 60 years. There's no HOA on agricultural land, sir. I have the legal documentation right here, filed with the county clerk and notarized by licensed officials. Victoria cuts me off, her voice shifting from professional to threatening. You need to leave now or I'm calling 911. Her finger is already hovering over her phone. Behind her, I can see security cameras mounted on new fence posts. Fresh white paint covering the weathered wood I remember from childhood. Everything screams suburban control imposed on land that's been agricultural for 6 decades. And this woman, perfectly styled blonde hair, pressed khakis, despite 90-degree heat, is treating me like a trespasser on my own family's inheritance. These documents are fake. I say, reaching for my probate papers. I have the will, the legal inheritance. Victoria doesn't wait. She presses the call button on speaker so I can hear every word that's about to destroy my life. 911. What's your emergency? This is Victoria Patterson at Riverside Meadows. I need immediate police response. There's a trespasser refusing to leave legally sold private property, and he's becoming aggressive. 12 minutes. That's how long it took for a woman with a clipboard and fake documents to turn me from a property owner into a criminal. But she made one fatal mistake. She thought a freelance photographer wouldn't know how to document evidence. And by the time I'm done exposing her scheme, that clipboard won't save her from the felony fraud charges coming her way. The 3-hour drive from Dallas in my 2015 Honda Accord should have been a celebration. 4 months of probate paperwork finally complete. Inheritance documents signed and sealed. Ready to start fresh as a freelance photographer on the land where 3 generations of my family had built their lives. The manila folder on my passenger seat contained everything I needed. Grandma Eleanor's will, the probate court order, and the deed transfer documents that made me the legal owner of 47 acres of Texas ranch land. The last time I'd made this trip was for Grandma Eleanor's funeral in January 2024. But today, this warm afternoon in May, I was coming home as the owner. The radio played classic country as I turned off Highway 75 onto the familiar county road. Windows down, breathing in the smell of cedar and wild grass that had defined every childhood summer I'd spent here. Instead of the weathered ranch gate I'd known since I was 8 years old, a stark white sign mounted on new posts declared Riverside Meadows HOA in bold black letters. Private community. No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. The fence posts gleamed with fresh white paint over the natural wood that had weathered to comfortable gray for decades. A security camera perched beside the gate like a mechanical vulture, its black lens tracking my approach. Everything screamed suburban subdivision control imposed on land that had been agricultural for 60 years. A woman emerged from the farmhouse before I'd even parked, moving with the confident stride of someone accustomed to being in charge. Navy blazer over pressed khakis despite the May heat. Blonde hair styled in a perfect helmet that wouldn't move in a tornado. Clipboard carried like a weapon. Everything about her screamed suburban HOA president transplanted onto rural property that had never needed community oversight. I'm Victoria Patterson, president of the Riverside Meadows Homeowners Association, she announced before I could step out of my car. Her voice carried practiced authority, each word carefully enunciated to emphasize her position. This is private community property, and I'm afraid you'll need to leave immediately. I climbed out of the Honda, legs unsteady after the shock of finding everything changed. I think there's been some mistake, I said, keeping my voice calm despite confusion racing through my mind. This ranch has been in my family for 60 years. My grandmother never mentioned any HOA. Victoria's practiced smile shifted into something predatory. Your grandmother failed to pay community assessment fees for 3 years, she said, consulting her clipboard with theatrical precision. Under Texas property law, the HOA has the right to recover unpaid dues through forced sale. This property was legally purchased at a tax auction last month. She produced a manila folder containing documents that looked disturbingly official, complete with embossed seals and notarized signatures that seemed almost too perfect, too professionally formatted for a rural property dispute. The paperwork bore titles like tax sale certificate and transfer of ownership, each page designed to intimidate rather than inform. The words hit like physical blows. Grandma Eleanor had paid her property taxes every January like clockwork for 60 years. I'd seen the canceled checks in her records, organized by year in the old filing cabinet. The idea that someone had somehow imposed HOA fees on agricultural land that predated any development by decades should have been legally impossible. But the documents in Victoria's hands suggested otherwise. That can't be right, I said, stepping closer. This property has been zoned agricultural since 1962, long before any developments existed. You can't just retroactively apply HOA rules to established farmland. Victoria's expression hardened, professional courtesy evaporating. Sir, I understand this might be difficult news, but your grandmother's financial difficulties are not my responsibility, she said, tone shifting to barely concealed irritation. These documents are filed with the county clerk's office and notarized by licensed officials. The sale was conducted according to all applicable laws. These documents are fake, I said, desperation creeping into my voice. I have the will. Probate papers, this is my legal inheritance. I gestured toward my car, where my folder of legitimate documents sat on the passenger seat. Victoria pulled out her phone with deliberate slowness. Sir, you need to leave immediately or I'm calling the police, she said, finger hovering over a contact labeled Sheriff Direct Line. She didn't wait for my response. Pressing the call, she activated the speakerphone, ensuring I could hear every word that would destroy my life. 2 rings, then 911. What's your emergency? "This is Victoria Patterson at Riverside Meadows Estates," she said, voice taking on the concerned tone of a responsible citizen. "I need immediate police response. There's a trespasser on legally sold private property refusing to leave. Ma'am." There's been a mistake. I tried to interrupt, to explain my side to the dispatcher. Victoria talked over my protests. He's becoming aggressive and won't listen to reason. I have all the legal documentation right here, proving the property was sold 6 weeks ago. Her phrasing painted me as unstable, potentially dangerous if not removed quickly. Officers are en route. Ma'am, please maintain a safe distance until they arrive. The dispatcher responded through the speaker. I could hear typing and radio chatter as units were dispatched to remove me from my own family's land. Victoria's triumphant expression told me everything. This wasn't a mistake or a clerical error. This was a carefully planned operation, and I'd walked straight into her trap. 12 minutes later, gravel crunched as a county sheriff SUV pulled up behind my Honda. Deputy Martinez emerged with the measured pace of someone who'd handled thousands of similar calls. Victoria stepped forward immediately. Folder ready for inspection. "Officer, this gentleman is refusing to leave private property after being shown legal documentation," she said with practiced efficiency. I scrambled for my inheritance papers, hands shaking as Deputy Martinez examined Victoria's documents first. The deputy's eyebrows rose at certain sections, clearly impressed by the professional presentation. When she reviewed my probate papers, confusion grew in her expression. "Sir, these folks have what appears to be proper paperwork," Deputy Martinez said after several minutes. "You'll need to resolve this through civil court rather than risking criminal trespass charges." Standing in the driveway where my grandmother had taught me to ride a bicycle, I realized emotional arguments about family history wouldn't overcome documents that looked official enough to fool experienced law enforcement. "I'll leave for now," I said, forcing my voice steady. But this isn't over. 20 miles down the road, parked outside a gas station with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, I pulled out my phone and called Margaret Chen. She'd handled my grandmother's estate through probate court, and if anyone could explain how 47 acres of family land had vanished into HOA paperwork, it would be her. Margaret Chen's law office occupied the ground floor of a converted Victorian house 3 blocks from the county courthouse, the kind of practical space that served rural communities, with framed diplomas beside faded photographs of local landmarks. Filing cabinets lined the walls like sentries guarding decades of property disputes. The smell of coffee and old paper filled the air as I spread my inheritance documents across her desk, hands still trembling from the morning's confrontation. "Tell me exactly what happened," Margaret said, adjusting her reading glasses as she examined the probate papers she'd helped me prepare 4 months earlier. Her voice carried the calm authority of someone who'd spent 25 years untangling legal messes for people who couldn't afford big city attorneys. I recounted the encounter with Victoria Patterson, describing the fake HOA signs, the official-looking documents, and the 911 call that had turned me from property owner into trespasser in 12 minutes. Margaret listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad, her expression growing more skeptical with each detail I provided. When I finished, she examined Victoria's documents with the practiced eye of someone who'd reviewed thousands of legal filings. Her frown deepened as she turned through the pages. occasionally holding them up to the light or running her fingers across certain sections. These are professionally formatted. But there are immediate red flags. Margaret said after several minutes. Wrong legal format for Texas tax sale procedures. Missing county seals that should be raised rather than flat. And signatures that don't match any official I've worked with in 15 years. More importantly, I've never heard of Riverside Meadows HOA. And I know every legal entity in this county. She set the documents aside with the dismissive gesture of someone discarding obvious forgeries. The next 4 hours transformed Margaret's office into a war room as we systematically demolished every claim in Victoria's fabricated documents. Margaret's paralegal, Sophie, joined our investigation with the enthusiasm of someone who'd helped expose fraudulent schemes before. State of Texas Business Registry shows no entity named Riverside Meadows HOA. Sophie announced from her computer terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard as she searched multiple databases. No corporate filings, no assumed name certificates, no registered agent listings. This organization has never existed. She printed screenshots of empty search results, each one another nail in Victoria's carefully constructed facade. Margaret pulled property deed records going back to 1962, spreading the documents across her conference table like a paper timeline of my family's history. Agricultural zoning classification since your grandmother bought the land, she said, pointing to specific entries on each deed. No HOA covenants ever filed. No community restrictions. This property has maintained independent status for over 60 years. The tax records told an even clearer story. Current on all obligations. Sophie confirmed. Reviewing county assessor files. No liens. No unpaid assessments. No outstanding obligations of any kind. Your grandmother's estate paid property taxes through the end of last year with a zero balance. She highlighted the relevant entries, creating a paper trail that directly contradicted every claim in Victoria's documents. Historical research revealed the most damning evidence against Victoria's scheme. Property surveys from multiple decades consistently showed the ranch as independent agricultural land with clearly marked boundaries that never intersected any community association territory. Here's the key discovery, Margaret said, pulling out a county planning map from 1995. Your ranch is explicitly outside all community association boundaries. The nearest legitimate HOA is 12 miles south, and their jurisdiction ends at Bear Creek Road. She traced the boundaries with her finger, showing how the ranch sat in a pocket of agricultural land that had never been subject to community development. The evidence painted a picture of systematic fraud designed to target isolated properties during vulnerable transition periods. Victoria had chosen her victim carefully. Waiting until my grandmother's death created a window when ownership appeared unclear to casual observers. Let's see what we can find about Ms. Patterson. Margaret said, turning her attention to the woman who'd orchestrated this elaborate deception. Public records painted a picture of someone whose financial problems followed her like a shadow across multiple states. Victoria Patterson moved to this area in 2018, Sophie announced, reading from her computer screen. Rents a house 2 miles from your property, currently 3 months behind on payments, according to county court filings. She scrolled through databases that revealed a trail of financial disasters stretching back years. Previous addresses showed a clear pattern. Shreveport revealed an eviction filing for non-payment of rent, along with small claims judgments from multiple creditors. Houston records revealed a bankruptcy filing in 2017, listing gambling debts that exceeded her reported income by substantial margins. The pattern suggested someone who moved frequently to stay ahead of financial obligations. The current situation looks desperate. Margaret observed. Reviewing the most recent filings. Car repossession last year. Multiple creditor lawsuits pending, and now facing eviction from her current rental. Someone in that position might see an isolated ranch as an easy target for a quick money scheme. She highlighted specific entries that showed increasing financial pressure leading up to Victoria's confrontation with me. Social media investigation revealed additional clues about Victoria's mindset and planning. Her profiles contained posts about exciting new business ventures and community involvement opportunities, language that suggested someone building credibility for a long-term deception. The timeline of her posts correlated with her arrival in the area and coincided with my grandmother's declining health. We're filing a motion for emergency injunctive relief first thing tomorrow morning, Margaret announced, pulling legal forms from her filing cabinet. The evidence is overwhelming that Mrs. Patterson has no legal standing whatsoever to claim ownership or control of your property. She began drafting the motion with practiced efficiency, citing specific statutes and precedents that would force Victoria off the land. The strategy focused on three main arguments, exposing the fake documents as obvious forgeries, proving legitimate ownership through probate records, and demonstrating that no HOA had ever existed with jurisdiction over agricultural land in that area. Timeline gives us 5 days until the hearing. Margaret explained, "That's enough time to build an airtight case if we work systematically. My role involved gathering historical evidence that would support our legal arguments in court. As a photographer, I could create professional documentation of the property, conduct recorded interviews with longtime neighbors, and design timeline charts showing the property's ownership history. Start with the neighbors who've been around longest." Margaret advised as we wrapped up our strategy session. Their testimony about the property's history will be crucial for establishing that no HOA ever existed. She handed me a list of adjacent property owners with one name circled in red ink. Mrs. Helen Martinez lives just down the road. She's been there since the 1960s and would remember if any HOA had tried to establish authority in the area. I called Mrs. Martinez that evening, introducing myself as Eleanor's grandson and explaining that I was researching the property's history for legal purposes. Her response chilled me to the bone. "Oh, honey, that explains everything," she said, her elderly voice crackling through the phone connection. That Patterson woman approached me about 3 months ago, asking all sorts of questions about community development opportunities and whether I thought the old ranch might be suitable for residential expansion. I thought she was just being nosy. But now I understand what she was really doing. The timeline fit perfectly. 3 months ago, my grandmother had been declining rapidly, and anyone paying attention to obituaries would have known the property would soon change hands. Victoria hadn't stumbled into this opportunity by accident. She'd been planning her move for months, researching the area, identifying vulnerable targets, and preparing her elaborate deception with the patience of a predator stalking prey. Mrs. Martinez's phone call revealed more than just Victoria's advanced planning. During our conversation the next morning, she provided a timeline that explained exactly how an elaborate fraud had unfolded in plain sight while an entire community watched without understanding what they were witnessing. "Your grandmother passed on January 15th, Mrs. Martinez said. her voice carrying the weight of someone who'd watched tragedy unfold from across the fence line. I remember because I brought casseroles to the house that week, thinking family would be arriving for arrangements. But you were dealing with all that legal paperwork from out of state, and the place sat empty while winter settled in. Victoria's move came exactly 2 weeks later on January 30th. She showed up with a clipboard and that confident smile, telling everyone the new owners had asked her to caretake until they could arrive from the city. Mrs. Martinez continued, said they were concerned about vandalism and wanted someone local to keep an eye on things. It made perfect sense to all of us. The lie was simple, reasonable, and exactly what neighbors wanted to hear about property that appeared abandoned. My probate filing hadn't occurred until March 1st. Delayed by out-of-state paperwork requirements and the complexity of transferring agricultural land through estate proceedings. That created a 6-week window where the property appeared legitimately abandoned to casual observers, giving Victoria time to establish her presence and build her fabricated authority structure without immediate challenge. The fake HOA infrastructure emerged through a carefully orchestrated sequence. Signs appeared during the 3rd week of February, followed by security cameras and fresh paint on fence posts. Mrs. Martinez recalled, said the new owners wanted to establish community standards before they arrived. Local acceptance came naturally because Victoria's story fit perfectly with established patterns of urban professionals buying rural properties. Victoria's community penetration began with calculated social engagement designed to establish credibility and gather intelligence about local dynamics. She attended church socials at First Baptist, volunteering to help serve meals and clean up afterward. The strategy positioned her as someone with traditional values who respected community institutions, exactly the kind of person rural residents trusted with responsibility. She joined our book club within a month of arriving. Mrs. Martinez explained during a follow-up conversation. Always contributed thoughtful discussion, brought homemade cookies, volunteered to host meetings at her rental house. Everyone liked her immediately. The charm offensive built relationships that would prove crucial when Victoria needed community support for her fabricated narrative about property ownership. The seeding process happened gradually through casual conversations that planted ideas without triggering suspicion. The new owners are city folks who might not understand our rural ways became Victoria's recurring theme. They asked me to help with community integration until they can learn local customs. Social media became Victoria's primary tool for building legitimacy and spreading her narrative to a broader audience. Her posts in local community groups focused on Riverside Meadows development, bringing prosperity to the area. Exciting to see responsible development that respects our rural character while improving local amenities. Read one typical post that garnered dozens of supportive comments from neighbors. The local newspaper featured the pinnacle of Victoria's legitimacy campaign. Neighbor helps smooth property transition ran as a human interest story in the weekly edition, complete with a photograph of Victoria standing beside the ranch gate with her clipboard and professional smile. The confrontation video emerged within hours of my forced departure, carefully edited to remove context while highlighting my frustration and raised voice. Disturbed man threatening peaceful neighborhood read the caption when the footage appeared in local community groups. This individual showed up, claiming to own property that was legally sold weeks ago, and became increasingly agitated when shown proper documentation. The description painted me as mentally unstable, potentially dangerous, and completely disconnected from reality. Viral spread happened rapidly through interconnected social networks that spanned multiple rural communities. The video accumulated 400 shares within 24 hours. with neighbors sharing the story as a cautionary tale about security threats. This is why we need community. Security became a common refrain in comment threads that positioned Victoria as a responsible citizen, protecting everyone from unstable outsiders. Professional isolation began immediately after the video gained traction online. My major clients received concerned community emails about my supposed instability, complete with links to the viral video and warnings about potential liability issues. The marketing agency dropped me from an ongoing branding project within 48 hours, citing client concerns about public relations risks. We can't afford to be associated with any kind of community controversy, the project manager explained. Nothing personal, but we have to protect our reputation. Social pressure forced me to abandon local networking events and work exclusively from Dallas coffee shops, rather than risk additional confrontations that might be recorded and weaponized against me. 3 days after the video reached peak circulation, Mrs. Martinez called with a tone that mixed concern and determination. "Something's not right, dear," she said, her elderly voice carrying the authority of someone who'd observed small-town dynamics for decades. "I've been thinking about everything your grandmother told me over the years, and she never mentioned any HOA meetings, community assessments, or property restrictions." Eleanor was proud of that ranch's independence. She continued, "Used to joke about how she'd never let anyone tell her what color to paint her barn or when to cut her grass. The idea that she'd voluntarily join some HOA goes against everything I knew about her character." Mrs. Martinez had lived next to my grandmother for 40 years. Watching her fight off door-to-door salesmen and refuse county attempts to pave her dirt road. "There's something else," she added, lowering her voice as if someone might be listening. "I've been asking around quietly, and nobody remembers voting to establish any community association in this area. HOA formation requires property owner approval, but none of us ever received notices about meetings or elections. That Patterson woman just showed up one day claiming authority nobody ever gave her." The revelation confirmed what Margaret's research had already proven through legal channels, but hearing it from someone who'd watched the deception unfold in real time added a human dimension that court documents couldn't capture. The legal notice arrived by certified mail on Friday afternoon. Its official letterhead and urgent language designed to create panic rather than provide genuine safety information. Emergency demolition order. Unsafe structures dominated the top of the page in bold red letters, followed by technical language that condemned the historical barn built in 1943 as an immediate safety hazard to community welfare. Victoria's justification filled 3 single-spaced paragraphs of bureaucratic language that sounded official enough to fool casual observers. Recent structural engineering assessment has determined that deteriorating agricultural buildings pose significant insurance liability risks to surrounding properties. The 48-hour timeline eliminated any possibility of normal legal remedies, with demolition scheduled for Monday morning, while Margaret's emergency restraining order couldn't be heard until Thursday. My panic went beyond legal concerns to something deeper and more personal. These structures represented more than agricultural buildings or potential safety hazards. The barn held 60 years of family memories. From childhood visits where I'd helped feed cattle to teenage summers when I'd learned to develop photographs in the makeshift darkroom my grandfather had built in the loft. Waiting for the legal process felt like abandoning everything my grandmother had worked to preserve. Sunday evening. I loaded my Honda with camping gear and professional photography equipment that would help me document whatever was about to happen. If Victoria wanted to destroy family heritage, she would do it in front of witnesses, with cameras rolling, and evidence preserved for future legal proceedings. The drive to the ranch felt like heading into battle, with camera equipment serving as weapons in a war I'd never asked to fight. Victoria's countermove became apparent when I arrived Sunday evening. A local construction crew was already on site, preparing equipment for early morning demolition despite the weekend timing. She's paying us triple overtime for this job. One worker confided during a brief conversation near the equipment trailer. The premium rate suggested desperation rather than routine safety maintenance money that could only have come from gambling, winnings, or other illegal sources, given Victoria's documented financial problems. Monday morning arrived gray and humid. With the sound of heavy equipment breaking, the rural quiet at exactly 7 a.m. The bulldozer approached the barn like a mechanical predator, its diesel engine rumbling with the kind of power that could reduce 60 years of family history to rubble in minutes. I positioned my Honda directly behind the barn, creating a physical barrier that would force the operator to either stop or risk destroying a civilian vehicle along with the historical structure. "Sir, we have permits and work orders that authorize this demolition," the foreman announced, approaching my car with clipboard in hand and frustration evident in his voice. "You need to move your vehicle immediately so we can proceed with safety-required structural removal. This property doesn't belong to any HOA," I replied, climbing out of the Honda with my camera equipment. "These are fake documents issued by someone who has no legal authority to order demolition of historical agricultural structures." The explanation sounded inadequate against the backdrop of official-looking paperwork and heavy machinery. But truth had to be spoken, even when it seemed powerless against fraud. Victoria's arrival transformed the scene from a construction project into a media circus. She emerged from a black SUV followed by Sheriff Anderson and a local television news crew that had obviously been contacted in advance to document what she planned to portray as responsible community action against an unstable property claimant. This individual has been harassing our community for weeks, making false claims about property that was legally sold to address unpaid tax obligations, Victoria announced to the television reporter, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being believed without question. "We've tried to be patient and work with him through proper channels, but public safety has to take priority over personal disputes." The reporter conducted her interview without challenging Victoria's version of events or asking to see documentation that supported her claims. I positioned myself on the barn steps, recording everything on my phone while the bulldozer idled nearby and construction workers waited for instructions. The standoff had all the elements of compelling television drama without any of the legal complexity that would have explained why a freelance photographer was risking arrest to protect agricultural buildings from demolition. Margaret's arrival felt like cavalry appearing on the horizon of a battlefield where defeat seemed inevitable. She emerged from her sedan with paperwork in hand and the confident stride of someone who'd spent the morning convincing a sympathetic judge that emergency intervention was necessary. "All construction is halted pending full hearing," she announced, approaching the foreman with an emergency restraining order that bore the official seal of county court. This order prohibits any demolition or structural modification until legal ownership questions can be resolved through proper judicial procedures. The document's authority was immediate and undeniable, forcing the bulldozer operator to shut down his engine while lawyers sorted out competing claims to legal authority. Victoria's fury was visible as she realized her carefully planned destruction had been stopped just minutes before completion. "This is just delaying the inevitable," she declared loud enough for television cameras to record her frustration. Safety hazards don't disappear because of paperwork delays. As the construction crew loaded their equipment, I overheard Victoria speaking urgently into her phone near the property gate. Her voice carried the stressed tone of someone reporting failure to people who didn't accept excuses. "No, I can't wait anymore," she said, glancing around to ensure privacy. "The sharks are circling, and that lawyer is asking too many questions. We need to move to the next phase immediately." The conversation revealed pressure from unknown sources and suggested that Victoria's scheme involved more people and higher stakes than a simple property fraud. The psychiatric evaluation petition arrived 3 days after the bulldozer standoff, delivered with the same official ceremony as Victoria's previous legal maneuvers. Motion for court-ordered competency assessment dominated the letterhead in stark black letters, followed by clinical language that transformed my defense of family property into evidence of mental instability requiring professional intervention. Victoria's new strategy represented a calculated escalation from property fraud to personal destruction, targeting not just my inheritance but my fundamental capacity to function as a legal adult. The supporting evidence section read like a prosecutor's case file, listing every interaction I'd had with Victoria as proof of deteriorating mental health. My multiple confrontations became escalating aggressive behavior. My attempts to present inheritance documents became obsessive attachment to falsified paperwork. The bulldozer standoff transformed into dangerous obstruction of legitimate safety procedures. Community testimonials provided the most damaging element. 3 neighbors had written detailed letters describing my supposed erratic behavior and threats to community safety, each one carefully worded to sound like concerned citizen reports rather than coordinated character assassination. The signatures belonged to Victoria's gambling buddies from the tribal casino people who'd never lived in the area long enough to witness my actual behavior. If declared mentally incompetent, I would lose legal standing to contest property ownership, file lawsuits, or make any significant legal decisions without court-appointed supervision. Victoria's scheme would become irreversible because incompetent individuals cannot challenge property transfers. Dr. Patricia Caldwell's appointment as the court-ordered psychiatric evaluator represented another carefully orchestrated element. Recently relocated from a failed practice in Houston, Dr. Caldwell needed clients desperately and remained vulnerable to influence from anyone who could provide referrals. Her office occupied a converted retail space in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service, with motivational posters covering walls where medical diplomas should have hung. "Why do you think everyone is lying about the property sale, Dr. Caldwell began, consulting notes that seemed unusually detailed for our first meeting. Her questions carried the leading quality of someone who'd already reached conclusions. "Do you believe there's a conspiracy against you involving multiple community members and government officials? The documents are forged," sounded like classic conspiracy theorizing when spoken aloud in a clinical setting. "She's lying about everything" became evidence of persecution complex. Multiple people are involved in covering this up, transformed into textbook paranoid ideation. "Has grief over your grandmother's death affected your judgment about reality, Dr. Caldwell continued, referring to notes that contained information I'd never provided. "Sometimes people experiencing loss create elaborate fantasies about inheritance that don't align with legal documentation. The paper stock is completely wrong for official county documents," Elena explained, holding genuine tax sale certificates beside Victoria's fabricated versions under specialized lighting. County offices use specific suppliers and security papers that include watermarks and fiber content designed to prevent counterfeiting. These documents were printed on standard office paper you can buy at any retail store. The legal formatting errors provided additional evidence. Official tax sale procedures follow strict regulatory requirements. The legal terminology is incorrect. The procedural language doesn't match Texas statutes, and the certification format belongs to a different state entirely. Technology evidence provided the most damning proof. Computer forensics revealed that all documents had been created on Victoria's personal laptop using free legal templates downloaded from questionable websites rather than legitimate government sources. The metadata shows creation dates, editing history, and template sources that prove these documents never originated from county offices. Elena said, displaying forensic analysis that would be admissible in criminal court. Handwriting analysis revealed another layer of fraud. None of these signatures match any county official currently in office or retired within the past 5 years. She appears to have invented these signatures entirely, without even attempting to copy legitimate official handwriting. The fake company registration provided a paper trail that connected directly to Victoria's personal address. Riverside Meadows Development LLC was registered to Victoria's rental house address exactly 1 day before she first approached you about the property dispute. Marcus added, the company was dissolved 3 weeks later. Immediately after the bulldozer confrontation drew unwanted attention. The tribal casino investigation provided intimate details about Victoria's gambling addiction and the escalating financial pressure that had motivated her fraud scheme. Casino security had been monitoring her activities for months due to suspicious behavior patterns. Victoria's pattern was absolutely predictable, explained Casino Security Director Robert Two Eagles during a recorded phone interview. Every Tuesday, Social Security payment day, she would arrive with her monthly check and immediately begin high-stakes gambling that invariably resulted in total losses within hours. Then she would borrow money from other patrons, promising repayment from business deals that never materialized. Staff interviews revealed that Victoria's desperation level had increased dramatically during January, coinciding with my grandmother's death. She told everyone who would listen that she had a big deal coming through that would clear all her debts and set her up for life. She was very specific about the timeline, saying everything would be resolved by February. The final bet occurred 3 days before Victoria first approached me at the ranch. She lost her entire Social Security check, plus $2,000 she'd borrowed from loan sharks, all in a single evening. That's when we knew she was completely out of control and might do something desperate. Sheriff Anderson's interview with Victoria occurred at the county sheriff's office, conducted with formal procedures required for potential criminal charges. Victoria's initial response demonstrated the calculated deception that had characterized her entire scheme. I was helping the community address a legitimate property situation. All my documentation came from proper county sources, and I followed established procedures. The gradual admission process revealed someone whose lies had become so complex that maintaining them required increasingly elaborate explanations. When we showed her the forensic document analysis, she started changing her story. Sheriff Anderson explained. First, she claimed clerical errors. Then, she suggested someone else had prepared the paperwork. Finally, she admitted that maybe some documents weren't completely accurate. The complete breakdown occurred when confronted with casino records and loan shark threats. I just needed money fast. Victoria finally confessed, abandoning the professional facade. I thought I could make it look official, sell the property to some out-of-state buyer, and nobody would know the difference until I was long gone. Her full confession revealed the pathetic reality behind an elaborate scheme. I saw the obituary and realized this was my chance to get enough money to pay off my gambling debts and start fresh somewhere else. The old lady was dead. The property looked abandoned. And I figured I had weeks or months before anyone official would notice. Victoria's final desperate move occurred that same evening as news of her confession spread. Facing arrest warrants and civil lawsuits, she attempted to flee town with whatever cash and belongings she could gather. The escape attempt ended when her car broke down 3 miles outside the county line. Stranded on a rural highway with engine problems caused by repossessed parts that loan sharks had removed during their previous intimidation visits. Sheriff deputies found her sitting on the roadside with 2 suitcases. She was crying and asking if we could just let her leave quietly. Deputy Foster reported, said she'd never come back to Texas if we'd just pretend we hadn't found her. But there were too many felony charges for any kind of informal resolution. The final arrest occurred without drama, a quiet ending to a scheme that had terrorized an entire community. Sheriff Anderson found Victoria at the Greyhound bus station downtown, sitting on a wooden bench with a single suitcase. She didn't resist or try to run. Sheriff Anderson reported, "Just looked up when I called her name and said she was ready to face whatever consequences were coming. I think she was actually relieved that the whole thing was finally over." The Justice of the Peace hearing drew unprecedented community attendance, with the small courthouse packed beyond capacity as neighbors who'd been divided by Victoria's manipulation came together to witness resolution. Victoria's guilty plea avoided the need for a lengthy trial. "I accept full responsibility for my actions," she stated during her formal allocution to the court. "I apologize to the community I deceived, and particularly to Nathan Cooper, whose family heritage I attempted to steal for my own selfish purposes." The charges reflected the serious nature of her crimes: fraud in the 2nd degree, forgery of government documents, and filing false police reports carried maximum penalties of 12 years in state prison. But the plea agreement reduced her sentence to 4 years in county jail, plus full restitution and 5 years probation, with mandatory gambling addiction treatment. Sheriff Anderson personally supervised the removal of all fake HOA signage from the ranch property, treating the task as both legal obligation and symbolic gesture. The professionally printed signs that had created the illusion of HOA authority disappeared as quickly as they'd been installed. It felt good to tear down those fake signs and hand Nathan the keys to his own family's land. Sheriff Anderson commented, "Property rights are fundamental to everything we believe about individual freedom. What Victoria did wasn't just theft, it was an attack on basic principles that make rural communities work." The county clerk filed an official statement confirming that no HOA had ever existed with jurisdiction over agricultural land in the Riverside Meadows area, creating a permanent legal record that would prevent future attempts at similar fraud. Community validation came through a front-page newspaper retraction and apology that acknowledged the role local media had played in amplifying Victoria's false narrative without conducting adequate fact-checking. Mrs. Martinez received formal recognition from the County Historical Society for her role in preserving community memory and protecting a neighbor from systematic fraud. Guardian of Rural Heritage read the plaque presented during a ceremony. The neighborhood barbecue occurred on the first weekend after legal resolution, organized spontaneously by residents who wanted to transform the ranch from a symbol of conflict into a celebration of community solidarity. This is what your grandmother would have wanted. Mrs. Martinez told me as we watched children playing on the same tire swing she'd helped hang 30 years earlier. Eleanor always said this land was meant to bring people together. Today feels like we're honoring her memory the right way. Personal apologies came throughout the afternoon as neighbors who'd initially supported Victoria approached me individually. I feel terrible about sharing that video without getting your side of the story," admitted Tom Harrison from down the road. "Victoria seemed so credible, and we wanted to trust someone who appeared to be helping the community. The lesson involved implementing an informal network for verifying official claims in the future, with longtime residents like Mrs. Martinez serving as resources for historical context. We're not going to let anyone fool us like that again," declared several neighbors who committed to checking with multiple sources before accepting official-looking documentation at face value. Moving back to the ranch permanently felt like fulfilling a promise I'd made to my grandmother during her final weeks. Combining rural living with remote photography work provided the perfect solution for maintaining the property while building a sustainable career. Mrs. Martinez became my unofficial ranch historian, sharing decades of stories about seasonal patterns, neighbor relationships, and community traditions that connected me to a heritage I'd only experienced during childhood visits. Creative community integration happened organically as local organizations discovered that having a professional photographer as a neighbor provided opportunities for improving their promotional materials. The volunteer fire department received new logos and emergency contact cards, while school fundraising events benefited from professionally designed graphics. The simple satisfaction of rural life represented everything my grandmother had intended when she'd preserved this land for future generations. No grand business plans or development schemes, just peaceful family property maintained as agricultural heritage that could adapt to changing times while preserving essential character and independence. Victoria served her sentence at the county jail, participating in gambling addiction treatment programs that addressed the underlying problems that had led to her criminal behavior. My reputation was completely restored through the legal process and community recognition that I'd been the victim of sophisticated fraud rather than a disturbed individual making false claims. The ranch became a natural gathering place for community historical events, hosting activities that celebrated rural heritage while providing educational opportunities for children. The neighborhood learned a valuable lesson about the importance of supporting evidence over appearances, questioning authority claims, and protecting community members from manipulation. Simple justice had been served. Fraud was punished. Truth was rewarded. And community bonds were strengthened through shared experience of overcoming deception through mutual support and persistent investigation of facts.